Hello and welcome to this video going through a functional group testing model question. This example is fairly challenging in that there are several different possible ways you could approach it. So my particular method of doing this isn't the only way it could be done. So looking at what the question gives you is a selection of compounds you probably haven't seen before from the A-level syllabus, but they've all got fairly familiar functional groups. So it says at the bottom, to explain how chemical tests will allow each compound to be distinguished. So chemical tests mean lab tests and not spectroscopic analysis. So you need to include the essential details for all test procedures and observations. You don't have to worry about details of apparatus or quantities because it tells you they're not required. So it's worth reading the question to find what it is you actually have to do before you start. So let's have a look at each individual functional group. You've got a tertiary alcohol, an aldehyde, primary alcohol, two ketones, and obviously a secondary alcohol. So you can now start to look for ones that are unique to each compound. Not every compound will enable you to do this. You'll notice, of course, that I haven't gone anywhere near the carbon-carbon double bonds. I'll come back to them a little bit later. What I'm doing at the moment is to try and find actual functional groups that try to separate each compound out rather than confuse them with each other. So, if we list out the main functional groups in each compound, we can then start to look at maybe pairs of them where there is a distinguishing functional group between them. So, for example, E and G have both ketones, but only G has the alkene functional group as well. So the next thing to do is to take our functional group tests and line them up next to each of the compounds. So you can start maybe with B. Obviously there isn't a functional group test for tertiary alcohol, at least not at A level, and there is a functional group test for alkenes, which will be covered since GCSE. Obviously it's the addition of the bromine water, which will then decolorize as our positive observation. So what we want to try and do is create a positive observation that will enable us to try to separate each compound out. So now we can start formulating a plan. So at this point we've probably got about half of the marks, but it's starting to get a bit more challenging now because we have to think about how to use this information that we have. So taking all the functional groups and the tests that go with them, combining with their positive observations, we can start to think about how to identify the compounds. So assuming that we carry out each functional group test on each compound, we'll find that B is the only compound which we give a positive bromine water test and nothing else. C is the only compound which we form silver mirror with Tollens reagent. D is the only compound giving a positive test result with Br2 and acidified dichromate. E would only give a positive test with 2,4-DNP and nothing else. And F would only give a positive test result with acidified dichromate. And finally, G would only give a positive test result with both 2,4-DNP and with Br2. So like I said earlier, this isn't the only way in which this question could be answered. This is just one approach, but the idea being that you're trying to find positive test results rather than it's compound D because it doesn't do X, Y, or Z. You want to say it's compound D because it does do A and B, for example. Okay, so hopefully this has been a useful look at a maybe more challenging level response question and give you some insights into types of ways you could try and approach it. Okay, thanks for listening. Until next time, see you soon.